welcome to another edition of the Inside the FLX podcast. I'm Josh Durso, and as always, we're here in the FingerLakes1.com studio in downtown Seneca Falls. Today we're going to spend some time talking about substance abuse, specifically how one group is helping in that fight against substance abuse here in the Finger Lakes. Petrea Ray and Tanya Lombardo, both of the Partnership for Ontario County, are here. Thank you both for coming in. Petrea, a second time.
Thank you, Josh, for having us.
So before we get into the actual talk about the issue itself, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll talk to you, Tanya, about why you're here too.
Great. Cool. Okay. So I'm Petrea Ray. I'm the Substance Abuse Prevention Coalition Coordinator of Ontario County, and I work for the Partnership for Ontario County, a small nonprofit servicing the entire Ontario County region. We have a number of programs underneath our umbrella that basically focus on youth, family, and the community.
Mm-hmm. And Tanya, you are an interning with the Partnership, correct?
I am.
What was your what was appealing about the idea of working with the Partnership or having this opportunity?
Okay, well, this is part of my requirement for Keuka College.
Mm-hmm.
We do a practicum, the social work majors,
right,
every spring. And so, what interested me really was its mission. Just, educating the community to try to prevent substance abuse from happening, because I know it's huge pretty much in every small town.
Right.
So
now, that being said, what is, for those who might not have caught your first interview with us last year, talk to us a little bit about the mission of the Partnership and what it sort of entails across the board.
Globally?
Yeah.
So the Partnership globally works throughout Ontario County to, like I said, address youth, family, and community. We have 10 programs under our umbrella. We have the Child Advocacy Center that works with children who may have been abused or want to have one place to share their story, and a multidisciplinary team comes around them and helps address that issue. We have Youth Court, which has been around for 15 years, and that works with youth who may have had a first-time offense in the juvenile justice system, and they're judged by a jury of their peers. And the really cool part is that youth can also serve in leadership roles as like plaintiff, judge, bailiff, jury, whatever, prosecution attorney. And so that's held in Victor, Geneva, and Bristol town courts throughout the month. And they also have a school-based program at Geneva Middle School, which is brand new this school year. So they do that right in-house at Geneva Middle School. We also have family support centers in 4 school districts that offer 8 counseling sessions to families, as well as a community support center in Canandaigua. And then we have a support group for family members dealing with addiction. That's called Journey Through Loss. That's on Wednesday evenings at 7 o'clock. And that helps families who have either lost a child to addiction or are trying to rebuild that relationship. And that's held at Life Springs Church. And then I'm blanking on the other programs right now. We have Youth Mental Health First Aid that trains people on how to deal with maybe that first-time encounter with somebody having a mental health issue. And then we have a volunteer initiative called Nowhere to Go, which works with homelessness.
It pretty much sounds like the programs exist to fill the gaps
they do.
That exist.
So if we identify a gap, we try to find funding and programming that can help with that.
So the substance abuse issue in particular, how does your organization combat the gap that exists there?
So any way that we can. So we do a lot of education and awareness. So we do forums. We've done 20 forums around the county, either to school students in grades 6 through 12 at various school districts, or we've done community forums where we do some education. And what we bring to those forums is, someone in recovery who talks about their journey, parents who have lost their children to this issue, specifically heroin, law enforcement that talks about what are they seeing, public health who talks about how important it is to call 911 if you see an overdose and to give Narcan and the steps to giving Narcan. And then finally treatment and what treatment options are out there if you have a loved one or if you are battling addiction. So that's the first step, is that education and awareness. We then have launched a campaign to really raise awareness about the importance of securing your prescription drugs, monitoring them, and then disposing of them properly. So we call that our Monitor, Secure, Dispose, or MSD campaign. And the reason that we do that is statistics show that people who abuse prescription painkillers usually lead to heroin addiction. So we want to make sure that that's all out of people's homes, that nobody can access it, and that it's disposed of properly.
Now, to give us some perspective, how big of a problem is this? It doesn't make headlines every day. And we talked about this before the podcast, actually, before we started here. It doesn't make headlines every day, but this is probably, looking objectively at the entire region, this is probably the biggest issue facing the region as a whole right now. Put that in perspective in terms of like what you guys are doing and how labor intensive it actually is.
Well, you're my third event for the day. So, and I have one more tonight. It's extremely labor intensive. I think, what we're seeing is that, one, we're trying to beat that awareness that this could happen anywhere. It could happen in any community. And so we have to really say that, it can happen in any family. Addiction does not choose who it might hit. And so we want to raise that awareness. So we do that through these events. And then secondly, we want to try to prevent people from going down that road. And so we do that. But then there is the reality that people are on this journey. And so, we survey people all the time. And what we heard when we surveyed in 2015 is that about 3% of the people that we were serving had used heroin at some point in their life, of 2,000 people between the ages of 12 and 25. So when you think about that, that's about 59 people that we surveyed that this has touched. And I think that's low, actually, from what I've seen.
Right.
Because we've seen the overdose deaths and the increase in that. In 2015, I think we estimated that it was between 7 and 8 people, and now we're in the range of 26 to 28 people in Ontario County.
Yeah.
And that hits. That's someone's child. That's someone's loved one. And so we're trying to prevent that. So.
And one of the interesting things, it seems like the numbers, you're focused on young people because that's when you want to teach and prevention and everything like that, but it impacts age groups across the spectrum, correct?
Yeah, it does. So, in Monroe County, I attended a conference in September or October. The oldest person that they had passed away in the previous year was 88 years old, and so, we really see kind of a bubble between 25 and 40, I would say, of where the overdoses are occurring. But that being said, it can affect anybody. And you can overdose from prescription drugs or heroin. You can overdose from any drug, really. So the reality is that it's out there.
Now, as a college student, Tanya, I'm really interested to sort of get your perspective on this issue just in general. Like, maybe your exposure to it is a little different than like hers or someone else who isn't a college student.
For sure.
Talk to us a little bit about what that's like.
Okay. Well, in college, I don't see a lot of activity going on, but I definitely hear conversations about it. I know, for instance, that many students will talk about taking Adderall just to get, through an exam or something like that. That makes me cringe because they're not, supposed to take it unless they're prescribed, and they talk about buying it from other people and stuff. But, what I like best about this coalition is that, they're not saying drugs are bad. They're not pressuring that on people. It's just the prevention part of it and how you can go, to go forward with the steps if you are addicted, and how you can cope with it if you've had a loss of somebody from it. But yeah, really, it's just, it's hard because in this generation, drugs are just huge. So. And
to that point, the issue seems to be, when it comes down to it, is that there aren't as many treatment options as there obviously needs to be. The funding probably falls short from time to time. How do you, as an organization, how do you guys push back against that?
So, one of the things, is obviously educating everybody so that they hopefully don't go down that road, right? But then also supporting our allies in treatment and recovery. And so if we need to advocate for, more treatment beds, we can, as a coalition, write that letter to our legislators and say, we need more of this. We need, make sure our voice is heard. I think it's also important that we when we do presentations, we include them to raise that awareness and have that conversation about the need for more treatment beds. And the more people who get around that, the more hopefully will happen. So,
I was going to say, is that something when now that you've been seeing this firsthand for some time now, is that a situation that you see improving over time, or is it something that at this point, you guys just hope that it continues to improve and that the state and the other individuals who are able to continue to contribute and build those programs up.
I think we hope that it improves over time. And I think it's raising awareness of all of the options that are out there, because what I've discovered in my interviews with people in recovery is that there's different treatment options that work best for them. So if it's raising awareness about Narcotics Anonymous or AA or Celebrate Recovery, or places like FLACRA and Clifton Springs that offer inpatient and outpatient treatments, it's helping people kind of understand what is the best fit in their treatment journey, and where can they learn how to cope with what is going to be a lifelong struggle for them, you know. And that's the tough part about addiction, is that it is a chronic illness. It doesn't go away. You know, it's not like a light bulb or a light switch that they turn off and say, okay, I'm not going to use heroin anymore, or I'm not going to drink, or I'm not going to smoke pot, you know, like, so.
And talk to us a little bit about that, if you could. Like, she mentioned the Adderall thing with college students, and you're talking about marijuana. And is there this sort of, like, gateway effect that's happening, or is it just a matter of we're seeing it because we're hearing about it?
You know, so a lot of people argue with me on that. You know, when I'm presenting to young people, they'll always say, oh, alcohol and marijuana would never lead me to heroin, right? But I would say every recovery speaker I've ever had speak at one of my events has talked about starting young, you know, and experimenting with alcohol and marijuana, and then switching maybe to pills, and then at some point they've switched to heroin, you know, usually between 19 and 25. And they'll all say to me that when they were younger, they never thought they would become a heroin addict. Even maybe the first time they went to a treatment center, and maybe they were using alcohol or marijuana, they said, I'll never turn into a heroin addict. And then at some point they made that journey. Does everybody? No. But you don't know if you have that genetic predisposition. You don't know when you might make that switch. You don't know when you're at a party and somebody says, try this. It's a really, you know. So it's building those skills to say, I'm not going to go down that road.
Now, so the last time you were here, it was over a year ago, I believe.
I think it was.
You said that you were really excited about having a few extra drop boxes.
Yeah.
And now, in the last, 6, 8
Since
months,
July,
a year, you've tripled? It
Yeah.
looks like tripled your number of drop boxes in Ontario County?
Yeah. So we had 4 in July.
Yeah.
We are now at 12, which is awesome.
Yeah.
So we've pretty much covered the entire county with access to dispose of your medication, no questions asked. Would you like me to run through where they are?
Sure.
Okay. So we have one at the Bristol Town Hall. We have one we have 4 in Canandaigua. We have one at Finger Lakes Community College near the Health Center. We have one at Thompson Hospital in the lobby near the ATM. We have one at the Medicine Shop, and we have one at the DMV. We have one at the Farmington State Troopers, Victor Mead Square Pharmacy. And then in Clifton Springs, there's one at the hospital right in the lobby next to the ATM, like literally right next to it. You can't miss it. And then in Geneva, we have one at the North Street Pharmacy and the Geneva PD. And then we just partnered with Yates County, the Yates County Sheriff's Department, to put one in the village office in Rushville. So it's actually about 300 feet into Yates County, but it serves the Marcus Whitman School District, which is really cool.
Right.
So.
Now, what kind of impact do these drop boxes have? Because it's availability, right?
Yep.
Like availability to unload the stuff and get it out of the hands of people who probably shouldn't have it. Talk to us a little bit about that side of it.
So anybody can drop off any over-the-counter or prescription medication. And, you know, a lot of times we harp on prescription medication, but kids and people who are dealing with addiction can abuse over-the-counter medication just as well. So it's getting any medication out. And you can just drop it off, no questions asked. And since, I should have looked at my numbers before I came, but I feel like we're around, since April when we started tracking at the drop boxes, we're around 2,200 pounds that have been collected at the various drop boxes. And then we do mobile days as well, which I think I forgot to tell you about. But we have 2 mobile days coming up. One in Canandaigua on April 29th from 10 to noon at the Wegmans, and one in Richmond, which is the village of Honeoye, May 20th from 9 to noon. Last year at the one in Canandaigua, we broke records. We collected 1,137 pounds in 3 hours.
Now, for those who might not get the gist there, a mobile day is literally where you guys bring a drop box and you become a drop center.
We do. The sheriff's office sets up a trailer, and people just pull up with their cars. It's like a drive-through McDonald's, but drop off your meds. That's the only way I can describe it. Some people roll down their windows and hand over their meds, And sadly, some people pop their trunks, and their trunks are full of meds because they've cleaned out someone's house that maybe had stockpiled medication.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing sometimes what people bring. And we box it up, we weigh it, and it gets transported to Cavanta and burned up.
And that is how you're supposed to get rid of it. You should not be, for example, dumping it down the drain or the toilet or anything else like that.
Yeah. So we do not encourage anybody to dump it down the drain or flush it down the toilet because it gets in our water supply.
Right.
There is still the method of putting it in coffee grounds and kitty litter and putting it in your trash. I would prefer you use a drop box because you're still risking the water supply when doing that. But if you cannot get to a drop box, there is that alternative method of mixing it in with something.
Now, when you guys do these various events, there has to be a certain level of you're erasing or trying to erase the stigma around substance abuse, and that seems to be the message, the point. Has it gotten better in terms of getting people more comfortable with talking about it, on whether they're experiencing it personally or whether they're just, talking about it?
I think we've opened the conversation, and what I have seen since I joined this position in August of 2015 is people are more willing to have that conversation. Like, for example, school districts are inviting us in to do staff development days and talk to their teams about what are we seeing and what does that mean, and what can their teachers do. That's huge on our part. Various service organizations are inviting us in and letting us have the conversation. And I will tell you that I can't go anywhere. One of our colleagues was just talking about this today. You can't go anywhere and say, this is what I do without somebody having a story to share, where it's affected a family member or a neighbor or, the person down the street's child or loved one. And I think hopefully through our efforts, and especially the support group that we've started, we're raising that awareness that it's okay to have that conversation, and it's okay to seek support, and it's okay if it affects your family, because that's what we're here for.
No,
does that make sense?
No, actually, I'm glad you said that, because I'm curious, do college students have this, like you say that you hear them talking about it and talking about various levels of illicit activities, but is there sort of ever a dialogue about the substance abuse part of it itself that you hear people talking about, or is it mainly focused on the using side and less the what can we do to change this kind of thing?
It's more focused on the using side.
Right.
I actually bring up to them, how do you want to change this? Is there another way you can go about staying awake for a test, an exam, other than taking Adderall or any other substance? It's just people think it's cool to do,
I think it's that invincibility. People don't think that it's going to...
It would happen to them.
Yeah. And I also think with the 18 to 25-year-olds, that's the hardest market we have to find.
Right.
Because they're just in a different stage of their life. We can have tons of conversation with parents and older people. We've got a captive audience in schools, and we can get to the kids that way. College students and those who might be working during that time, I've found it's hard.
So it sounds like to me that colleges should be kind of engaging in more of the preventative measures and stuff like that. Yeah. Do you guys see that? Do you see colleges sort of stepping up to the table saying, okay, let's do this?
I haven't seen much of it from my college, really. I can't speak for other colleges, but I would plan on, bringing awareness to this to my college, for sure.
Yeah. So it's interesting because the two colleges that we have in our community, FLCC and HWS, they do have a pretty good drug prevention program. FLCC has its own college coalition that's working on different issues. Right. And HWS has a drug prevention coordinator. So they are trying to address this. I think it's just that age group. I hate to say that, but it's breaking kind of that awareness that this could happen.
Is it finding a way to engage them?
Yeah,
to keep them to keep their focus and their attention?
It is. So we're actually working on that right now as a coalition, how we can engage them. That
has to be the most difficult question, difficult abstract question to answer in the world, because I could not even imagine.
You want to know what we came up with that we're working on?
Sure.
And this came from somebody who was about 23, and he goes to FLCC. he advised us to create a bathroom stall campaign, because where are you going to find 18 to 25-year-olds? Everybody has to use the bathroom, and then try to get it up in bars and coffee shops and gyms and things like that, unique places. And so that's what we're working on, is actually an awareness campaign that way. It's not rolled out yet by any way, but how do you engage that population? You know, that they're going to be interested in a topic like this when they might think they're invincible.
Right. So have you guys had any luck with, in terms seeing engagement from business leaders and things like that? I would have to imagine that they're pretty invested in this. Yeah.
So businesses reach out to us all the time. Chambers of Commerce, can we get your bookmarks? Can we put them on display? Can we raise awareness, for you? So, absolutely. They're 100% on board. They're inviting us to health fairs that they might do for their employees. So,
now, one of the things that it seems like one of the stigmas, you'll say, people, they're abusing drugs, they're not working, they're not upright members of whatever. What is the sort of, that's part of the stigma, I feel like. How does the sort of employment branch connect to in your opinion, how does the employment branch connect to the substance abuse problem that exists? Do they go hand in hand, or is this kind of just people are lazily throwing this at it?
Well, what I could see is employment is part of recovery. So giving people something that they can grab onto. So if it's recognizing that someone may have been struggling with substance abuse and giving them the opportunity to have a job 5, 10, 15 hours to build those skills, have a goal and something to work on, I think is huge. So it's encouraging employers to, there's a campaign in Erie County that goes something about think outside the box. So if somebody checks that they had a drug felony or whatever, that you don't automatically exclude them from employment, give them the opportunity, because that's a mistake that maybe they had in their past. We don't currently have that campaign going, but I think it's a wonderful campaign. But it's also, as employers, recognizing that if you are concerned about somebody, that you ask those tough questions and you help them get into treatment. And then also having an awareness campaign about the dangers of substance abuse, and I hate to say this because I feel like a stick in the mug, but, maybe not having, if there's somebody who struggles with alcohol addiction, that you don't serve alcohol at an event because that can be a temptation for them, and so it's being a conscious employer as well. So.
Now, in terms of the treatment bed issue seems to be one of the ones that is always discussed first with this issue. More treatment beds is obviously ideal. Is there anything that people can do in the interim, as the state ultimately has to make that decision to push more money towards funding these beds? Is there anything that can be done by the people like yourself, people, even just regular community members, to kind of get that moving forward, the bedside of it?
I mean, my first guess, because I'm not in treatment, is to have that conversation with the local treatment providers and ask them what do they need. Right. I mean, that's always my first thing. And second of all, contact your local legislator and encourage that, that there needs to be more treatment beds. Those are the two things that I can think of, I know.
Yeah, now, so with that said, you guys have the cafes where you're hosting these roundtables, essentially.
Basically,
where you're bringing people from all walks of life. And what is the biggest, when you leave these events, what is sort of the biggest takeaway you have from what you see? Is it like a story that always sticks out, or is it the turnout itself, or what kind of really spurs you?
The biggest thing that I hear is that and every cafe has been different depending on the community that we've done them in, but is that the community cares and they want to have a voice in this issue, and so the people who come to those cafes really want to make a positive change in their community. And it could be as simple as, raising awareness on the issue in their community, because maybe that hasn't been done. It could be creating an activity that's youth friendly that they think would help students avoid going into substance abuse, or engaging in having parties on Saturday nights. They have this activity instead, right. Or it could be just understanding the problem more. So, for example, in Naples, they ask, can we have more information on treatment and what's available? Can we have more information on the criminal justice system and how they're addressing the issue? So every community's been different, but what has come out of it is that they care about their community and they want to make a positive change.
Now, the flip side of that, what is the biggest challenge that you guys see on a regular basis? I'm going to ask you the same question so you can start thinking about that one now.
Okay.
What is the biggest challenge with an issue like this in terms of just, not even necessarily just from the coalition standpoint, but just in general, like the fight itself?
Oh man,
that is tough.
That is a tough one.
That is really tough.
Is it the reaching people? Is it
I think it's
engaging
the reaching.
people,
I think it's
or-
reaching and engaging people.
Especially young people,
Right.
like we said.
So it's really easy for us to reach parents and older people.
Yeah.
And but I think it is reaching that target population to say, this is our message, and for them to hear it, having that proper tool to engage them, because we were just actually talking about it in our car right here. Us as adults preaching to young kids, do they hear that? Is
Right.
it more effective to have students share their story or a younger person in recovery share their story? So it's reaching those people. From a coalition point of view, it's having the manpower to get all of the information out there.
Okay.
We're volunteer based.
Yeah.
So it's truly, when you think about 9 school districts in an entire county, it's getting that manpower to get out there.
So for the people who are just ordinary members of the community, they see what you're doing, they see your mission, they like it, they're saying this is what we need. Beyond calling their locally elected officials, what can they do to help, to get involved, to be part of the change?
Yeah. So they could do a number of things. They could come to a cafe. They could help us distribute our bookmarks. We have, like I was telling you before the podcast, we've distributed about 5,000 of them to various doctors' offices and places. Or they could join the coalition and become a full-time volunteer at the coalition meeting. We meet on the third Wednesday of every month at the Wood Library at 4 o'clock, and they're welcome to come to that meeting and check out what we do. We have a number of little work groups that are working on a number of different missions, and they can help out.
Yeah.
It can be very easy, or it can be super intense. I don't mean to say that, but it could be as easy as
It depends on how much
Yep.
they want to invest in it,
Yep.
basically.
They could volunteer at one of those mobile days and help us collect medication and direct traffic and all of that. So
Now, you guys do have a Facebook page, website, anything like that, where
Yep.
people can kind of find you and get all of that information on how they
Yep.
can get involved?
Yep. And do you want me to tell you what that is?
Yeah.
So if you go to partnershipforontariocounty.org, there is a link to the Substance Abuse Prevention Coalition, and that'll get us to our Facebook page, our website, all of that. Or they can call 585-396-4554, and that connects to us as well.
Nice.
So, yeah.
All right. Well, I really appreciate both of you guys coming in, taking the time today. Definitely wish you the best of luck with this issue, because you're going to be fighting this for a very long time, I feel like.
Every step is a good step.
That's right.
All right, well, that's going to do it for us today. I'd like to thank Petrea and Tanya for stopping by and remind everyone to see how they can get involved in their community combating this issue. We will be back on Friday with Brooke Gordon, founder of the Cuca Lake app. In the meantime, though, don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you're checking us out on YouTube. The pod is also available on iTunes, Stitcher, and the FingerLakes1.com app. For Petrea Ray and Tanya Lombardo, I'm Josh Durso, inviting you to join us next time on Inside the FLX.